Hey home cooks, welcome back to Gregcipes. Today I'm making my version of fried zucchini. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut up a zucchini. I'm just going to use one zucchini for this video. Basically what I'm going to do, first of all, cut off the ends here. We don't need those. I'm going to cut this in half because this is about the length I like the pieces to be for this preparation. And I'm going to cut each half in half. And then I'm going to cut each of these halves into sixths because I think that gives you a good size. I kind of like them to be pretty small when I'm making fried zucchini. So that's about the size I'm going for. So I like to stand it up like this and cut this into thirds and then cut each of those thirds into 3 pieces. And I center the knife on where the center, like where the seeds are, and just do your best to cut it into thirds. Just go straight down. And then I cut into that. And then you just cut this one in half. All right. Now that we're here, I'm going to cut off the top of the seed part because when you cook this, that part of the zucchini just gets really mushy and it can kind of ruin the texture of the final product. So I just like to just cut the top of this off. Don't need it. All right, and then I just cut each of these in half. And this is the piece that I'm going to coat and fry. Now we have all our pieces. This should be, if I did my math right, 24 pieces. That will each be an individual piece of fried zucchini. I like to lay them out all in one layer, and what we're going to do is sprinkle a bunch of salt onto them. And what that is going to do is going to draw out moisture from the zucchinis before we actually cook them. And that's going to be good because if the moisture comes out while they're frying, it could ruin the coating and it'd be just a mess. So we're gonna let this sit with salt on it, and you'll see after a while, like 15 minutes or so, a bunch of water will be coming out of the zucchini, and we're just gonna dry that off and then start the coating process right before we fry. For my fried zucchini, I like to do a coating that consists of first coating the zucchini in flour, then dipping it into a batter, and then coating it with breadcrumbs. I think that gives a really good texture and also a really good flavor if you do it right. It's a pretty simple batter. I'll show you how to do it. All the measurements are pretty much equal. Give it around a half cup of all-purpose flour, another half cup of cornstarch, or about, it's not an exact science. That's good enough. We're also gonna put in an egg. That is gonna help the batter bind to the flour that we coat the zucchini in first. And then about a half cup of water. Then we just whisk this all together. And the thickness of this batter is basically going to determine how thick the coating on the zucchinis are. So if you like the breading, I'll just call it breading, to be really, really thick, which I don't know if I particularly like it to be super thick, then you want this batter to be really thick. But if you like the coating to be relatively thin and the main event to be the zucchini, you want this batter to also be pretty thin. So I think that a thinner batter is a little bit better. But it's a delicate balance because if you go too thin, then it's going to have trouble staying on the zucchini. But coating the zucchini with flour helps that. So you can kind of adjust how thick it is by adding a little bit of flour and a little bit of water as you go. I think this is a little too thin, so I'm going to add a tiny bit of flour Just gonna pick a little handful up with my hands and stick it in there. I like to pretty much put all of the seasonings for this into the batter. Mostly because the batter is going to be the most substantial part of the coating. You know that if the seasoning's in there, it's getting onto the zucchini. So I like to use a lot of seasonings, but I'm not using salt in the batter because we salted the zucchini already, and we're also going to sprinkle salt onto them after they're done frying. The first seasoning is just black pepper. I also have onion powder. That's good enough. Adding onion powder kind of gives these a little bit like of an onion ring flavor, which I kind of like, but if that doesn't sound like it'd be good to you, just skip the onion powder. All these seasonings are basically up to you and what you like. You don't have to add any seasonings at all. Next is garlic powder. You gotta add garlic powder. Garlic powder is not optional. Next is paprika. I like to add paprika for flavor, but also it gives everything kind of a darker color. And then last but not least is cayenne, just a dash, just to give it a little heat. And now we just mix that all in, and the batter will start to take on a very nice color thanks to the paprika. And you know what, with all the seasonings, it's actually looking a little thick to me, so I'm gonna add just a little bit of water. All right, that's right where I want it. So we are ready to start our coating, dredging setup, whatever you want to call it. One last thing I want to tell you about the coating. I've already put some flour, and these are PANKO breadcrumbs, into 2 separate plates. I like to add dried parsley to the breadcrumbs. I think it makes the final product like look nice, and I also kind of like that herby flavor that it brings. So I just dump a bunch of dried parsley. You could probably use like something like Italian seasoning to the same effect, but I just like to use the parsley. So just mix that all together, and now it's a mixture of breadcrumbs and parsley. We've let the zucchini sit for a while after they've been salted, and you can see that they are just weeping. They're so wet. Zucchinis just have a lot of water in them, and we wanted to get this out. So I'm gonna take a paper towel and just go ahead and do my best to dry all this off. Don't worry too much about getting like all the water off, because we are going to be dipping these into some flour before we coat them in the batter, and that's gonna help dry them out a little bit as well. But it's good to try to get as much of this water out as possible. Another thing that happens is they actually get a little bit flexible once the water has been taken out of them, because the cellular structure of the plant cells has been compromised. That's why the water all leaks out in the first place. And now the coating process all kind of has to happen quickly, because as soon as we get them coated, we want to drop them into the oil that we're going to fry them in. So the next step is to get the oil hot and set up our dredging station right next to where we're going to be frying. I will now demonstrate the coating process using a single zucchini segment as a model. We're going to use kind of a wet hand, dry hand technique. So we're going to take our zucchini and put it in the flour. Just a thin coating of flour. And then we're going to just drop it into our batter and use our other hand to coat the zucchini in the batter. Do your best to get all the batter to stick to the flour coating. You take it out. You can see it's pretty thick around it. So if you want that to be thinner, just thin out the batter a little bit. Then we're going to drop it into our breadcrumbs and just cover it as fast as we can with breadcrumbs. And normally I would just drop this right into the fryer just to set the coating in a sense. But this one is just for demonstration. So that's what it looks like, and we would just drop this directly into the fryer. So now we can go set the fryer up and we can get started for real. All right, so I've got a like medium-sized saucepan here, and I'm just going to fill it with enough oil where the zucchinis will be mostly submerged. You don't have to have it so these deep fry, but you want a good amount of oil. Right about there. All right, and now we're just gonna start heating this up by turning on the heat. And I'm gonna have this at around a medium heat. The oil is nice and hot, so I'm going to start putting zucchinis into it. I'm gonna start with the demonstration one I made earlier. Zucchinis are perfectly fine to eat raw, so the cooking process is just to basically cook the breading, and how long that takes is going to determine how soft the zucchini on the inside becomes, and that's up to taste. And you can control how fast the outside cooks based on the temperature of the oil. So if you want them to cook fast and retain a little bit of texture on the zucchini inside, you want the oil to be pretty hot. I generally only put 4 zucchini in at a time just to maintain the temperature of the oil. I like the oil to be pretty hot and to still have some structure of zucchini on the inside. And these only take a couple minutes on each side to cook. All right, and the time it took me to bread all of them, we can see that the first one here is probably ready to flip. Nice and dark and crispy on the outside. The second one's probably good to flip too. And we'll just wait till these are done cooking. So this first one is pretty much done cooking, so I'm going to take it out and put it onto a paper towel. Actually, the second one is probably good too. Once the zucchinis are out of the fryer, I like to sprinkle a little bit of salt onto them. So these, once they cool off, are ready to eat. So here is our final product, and I just want to show you how crispy these are. Very nice. Now all we have to do is give it a try. So the breading is nice and crispy. It's got a good spice to it. The inside is soft and juicy. And this is just something that makes a really great side dish and would go great with something like a ranch dipping sauce. I hope you make it for yourself and enjoy. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe for more Gregcipes.